Have you ever been banned from a family event by your own mother? Not because you did something wrong, not because you caused a scandal, but simply because your presence makes them feel embarrassed. I still remember that afternoon clearly. The sky over Willow Creek was pale gray, and a cold wind swept through the trees outside the small apartment complex where I lived. I had just finished my shift at school, carrying a stack of test papers I still needed to grade for my weekend tutoring class, when my phone vibrated. The screen showed two words. I stopped halfway up the steps, instinctively tightening my grip on my bag. 32 years of being the daughter of Elaine Carter had taught me something very clearly. My mother only calls with a sweet voice when she wants something, or when she's about to say something that will hurt me. "Emma," she said the moment I answered. Her voice was soft as velvet but cold as glass. "I need to talk to you about Daniel's engagement party." I closed my eyes for a second. Daniel Carter, my younger brother. The golden child of the family. My mother's pride and joy. The man who was about to get engaged to Olivia Bennett, the beloved daughter of the prestigious Bennett family in Ashford Heights. I tried to keep my voice calm. "What about it, Mom?" There was a short pause. The kind of pause people use when they're preparing to place a knife in the softest part of someone's heart. "The Bennett family cares a lot about image," my mother said. "That night, Jonathan Bennett, Eleanor Bennett, some of their partners, their lawyers, and a few close investors will all be there." I let out a quiet laugh. "Not because anything was funny." "So," my mother exhaled, "Olivia feels that if you attend, the atmosphere might become a little awkward." I froze. Some sentences don't need to be long to hurt. They only need to be precise. "Awkward? Why?" This time, she didn't bother going around it. "Emma, you're the night shift manager at Rosehaven Senior Living. It's an honest job, I won't deny that. But it doesn't really fit the kind of guests who'll be there that night. Olivia doesn't want to be asked uncomfortable questions about her future husband's family." I could hear the blood pounding in my ears. Rosehaven Senior Living. The place where I had worked for 8 years. The place where I had held the hands of elderly residents as they passed away when their own families didn't arrive in time. The place where I changed diapers, read books aloud, mixed medication, and listened to the same old stories repeated hundreds of times, and still smiled. A job that was exhausting. A job that paid little. A job filled with tears. But it was the most honest work I had ever done. "So you're saying my job embarrasses you?" I asked quietly. "Don't turn this into an emotional issue." Her voice sharpened immediately. "I'm just stating the reality. Daniel is about to marry into the Bennett family. You should think about your brother. Think about your brother." I had heard that sentence my entire life. Think about Daniel when I gave up the larger bedroom for him. Think about Daniel when my birthday gifts were cut so the money could go toward his private school tuition. Think about Daniel when Mom told me not to talk about my promotion at Rosehaven during dinner, because that night the family was celebrating Daniel signing a contract with North Star Aviation. It was always Daniel. Always someone else. Never me. I bit my lip until it hurt. "So what do you want me to do?" "Don't come," my mother said simply. "I'll tell everyone you have a night shift." I laughed, this time out loud. Short, thin, sharp. "You already prepared the lie." "Emma, I understand." I hung up before she could say anything else. I stood there for a long time. The cold wind whipped across my face, but it wasn't nearly as cold as the feeling spreading inside my chest. I looked up at the gray sky over Willow Creek and suddenly felt unbelievably tired. Not tired from work. Not tired from money problems. But tired of constantly trying to be pleasant enough to deserve love from people who should have loved me in the first place. That night, I didn't turn the lights on right away. I sat in my small apartment, watching the darkness slowly crawl into the living room. On the wooden shelf beside the window stood an old photograph of me at 10 years old, sitting in a garden with my grandmother, Jasmine Carter. She was wearing a cream-colored sweater, her silver hair tied neatly in a low bun, her eyes gentle but deep. I still remember what she told me that day. "Emma," she said softly, "in this family, there will be times when you're treated as if you're smaller than your true worth. When that happens, don't rush to believe them." She paused, then smiled faintly. "Other people see us through the limits of their own vision, not through the limits of our value. The most frightening moment on the savannah is not always when the lion leaps. Sometimes, it's when the prey stops panicking. That moment is very short. so short that if you blink, you might miss it. But within that instant, the order of the grassland, an order that seems permanent, begins to tilt. Because we are used to thinking the story here is very simple. The lion is power, the antelope runs, and fate has already been written while the grass is still wet with morning dew. But nature is rarely that simple. A fully grown wildebeest is far heavier than its dull, stubborn appearance suggests. And when it moves with the herd, it is not just a body that runs. It becomes part of a moving wall that can turn at any moment. In the ecosystems of East African grasslands, large hoofed animals such as wildebeest, zebras, and gazelles are the primary prey of lions, spotted hyenas, cheetahs, and wild dogs. That means they are not weak animals at all. They live under constant hunting pressure, and that constant pressure creates something many people overlook: experience. A wildebeest that survives long enough to reach adulthood doesn't just learn how to run, it learns how to read movement in the grass. It learns to recognize angles of approach. It learns when to surge forward. And sometimes, it learns when to turn around. A lioness has just missed her target. The young wildebeest she aimed for is pushed back into the center of the herd. In the chaos, instead of scattering and stretching the distance, the front of the herd compresses diagonally, the middle hesitates, and the rear pushes forward like a wave rolling back. And that is when something strange happens. 3 adult wildebeests stop running. They turn. The turn is not elegant. It is not heroic. There is no dramatic music that could glorify it. It is heavy, rough, dusty, and full of anger. But within that roughness, you can see the instinct of self-defense taking shape. 2 curved horns lower, hooves dig into the ground, shoulders tense, and instead of retreating, they move forward. That single movement is enough to change the atmosphere. Because predators can prepare for a chase, but they do not always want to pay the price of a direct collision. A horn striking the ribs, a hook into the thigh, a blow that disrupts the rhythm of acceleration. Any one of those can turn what should have been a simple hunt into an injury that lasts for weeks. And in nature, injury is often more dangerous than hunger. Hunger forces you to try. Injury takes away your ability to try at all. That is why intelligent lions do not hunt with strength alone. They hunt with choices. They choose the slower individual. They choose the angle with the least risk. They choose the moment before the prey can form a wall of resistance. In other words, what they want is not a fair fight. They want the cheapest victory. If you've listened this far and you're starting to realize that nature doesn't really operate by the simple rule of the strong defeat the weak, leave a comment with the number 1. Because the deeper you look, the more the savannah resembles a chessboard of cost and timing rather than a stage of heroes. The wildebeest herd compresses into a curved formation. The lioness hesitates for half a second. Half a second is enough for everything to change. A large male from the middle of the herd charges diagonally forward, not fast, but determined. It is not chasing anyone. It is not hunting anyone. It is simply sending a message without words. If you want a life, be ready to be injured. That is the strongest weapon prey can create. Not defeating the predator, but making the hunt too expensive. And once the price becomes high enough, the hunter withdraws. Many people like to view nature through the lens of victory. Who wins? Who loses? Who is king? But the savannah is far more practical than that. It does not care who looks more majestic. It only cares who remains intact enough to keep moving. A lion steps back half a pace, then another. Not because it feels fear the way humans describe it, but because it knows. It knows the next charge might not be worth it. It knows that what stands in front of it is no longer a separated individual, but a wall of horns, shoulders, weight, and momentum. And one wrong choice could turn today's hunger into the collapse of the entire week. This is also true for another predator, one even more ruthless in its own way: the cheetah. It has no roar that shakes the ground. No massive body like a lion. No brute resilience like a hyena. What makes the cheetah terrifying lies within a time window so short it almost seems absurd. They are hunters of seconds. National Geographic has recorded that cheetahs can accelerate from 0 to around 60 miles per hour in roughly 3 seconds, an explosive burst that makes safe distance almost meaningless if the prey chooses the wrong moment to run. But because a cheetah's victory depends on those few seconds, its failure is just as brutal. If the prey does not separate from the herd at the right moment, if the trajectory shifts, if the ground isn't open enough. If there is an obstacle, a sharp turn, a slight miscalculation, the entire advantage can collapse very quickly. The cheetah does not threaten with weight. It threatens by reducing the prey's thinking time to nearly zero. It watches silently, chooses the one individual that falls out of rhythm, and ends everything before fear fully forms. But the interesting thing is this. The strategy of the wildebeest and the strategy of the cheetah sit at opposite ends of the same equation. One wins by stretching time. The other wins by compressing it. One creates pressure through mass and resistance. The other creates pressure through speed and surprise. And the savannah accepts both. It sides with neither. It simply gives each strategy enough space to try its luck. As the sun climbs higher, the herd begins to move again. The chaos from moments ago becomes just a small wrinkle on the surface of the migration, and everything flows onward as if nothing significant happened. That is also one of nature's saddest truths. An individual may experience a life or death struggle, yet the world around it continues. The sun does not pause. The wind does not slow. The herd does not return to ask who almost died. The savannah has no time for delay. If you survive, you must rejoin the current. If you fall, the current moves past you, not cruel in the sense of hatred, but cruel in the sense that there is no space for exceptions. At the edge of the migration, groups of zebras burst forward in short sprints before merging back together. Their thick shoulders, strong necks, and legs built for open land make zebras excellent survivors of wide grasslands. But that advantage only truly matters when the battle happens on their home ground. Dry earth, clear visibility, and enough space to accelerate. And nature rarely allows anyone to choose the battlefield. That is why the story of the savannah is always so gripping. Not just because the animals are beautiful, not just because of speed or strength, but because every confrontation here hides a deeper question. Who is fighting under favorable conditions? A lion in tall grass, a wildebeest within a dense formation, a cheetah on open ground, a zebra on firm soil. All are forms of life. But change the circumstances slightly, and the balance shifts. That makes the savannah a place where no one is truly omnipotent. A lion may rule this patch of grass but fail against the countercharge of a herd. A cheetah may end a chase in 3 seconds but fail to sustain it for 50. A wildebeest may repel a single attack but not survive the next river crossing. Every species carries a kind of power and a limit. We are often fascinated by power. But the savannah reminds us that limits shape fate far more often. By late morning, the sunlight grows harsher. The grass begins to pale under the heat. Predators scatter. The herd stretches again into endless ribbons. From a distance, no one would know that moments ago a prey animal turned around and shook the order of the grassland. But the savannah remembers, the ground remembers, the dust remembers, and the predators remember too. They remember that chasing does not always mean control. They remember that some herds do more than run. And they remember that the moment prey stops being afraid, the hunt may begin to belong to the other side. But if you think that is already intense enough, it isn't. Because there is another confrontation even colder than this. There. Victory no longer belongs to the one who kills first. It belongs to the one who can wait longer. And when night falls around a carcass, lions will discover that sometimes the greatest threat does not come from strength, but from numbers. Night on the savannah is not calmer than the day. It simply changes the color of fear. During the day, you can see danger from far away. At night, you hear it before you see it. A carcass lies in the grass. The heat of the day still lingers in the ground. The scent of blood drifts slowly through the wind. A lion stands beside its prize, shoulders rising and falling slowly, chest heaving after the hunt that has just ended. If the story stopped here, you might think the battle was over, that the hardest part had already passed, that the one who killed the prey would be the one who eats. But the savannah does not accept such simple logic. Here, killing prey does not mean keeping it. And on many nights, the ones who come to take the reward are not the species that are larger in size. They are the ones stronger in persistence. Hyenas. Many people look at hyenas with contempt. Their laughter is mistaken for cowardice. Their habit of scavenging has tied them to the image of creatures that follow others and collect scraps. But that view is far too shallow. National Geographic notes that hyenas, especially spotted hyenas, are far better hunters than their reputation suggests. Studies in the Serengeti have shown that in many disputes between lions and hyenas over carcasses, the prey was actually killed by the hyenas themselves. Britannica also describes them as highly capable hunters, able to chase wildebeest, gazelles, and zebras at speeds up to around 65 kilometers per hour. In large hunts, a pursuit that begins with only one or two individuals can quickly grow into a coordinated effort involving dozens. In other words, hyenas are not weak scavengers. They are animals that survive through numbers, through relentless pressure, and through the ability to exhaust their opponents before they collapse. A lion may be terrifying in the moment of the final strike, but a clan of hyenas is terrifying in an entirely different way. They do not need to bring you down immediately. They only need to make it impossible for you to keep what you have. From the darkness, rough bursts of laughter begin to echo. Not steady, not loud at first, but scattered in clusters, in waves, like hooks thrown into the nerves of their opponent. The lion lifts its head. Its ears rise. Its eyes turn toward every direction. It knows that sound. Every adult lion knows that sound. It is not a threat. It is an announcement. We have smelled it. We are coming. And we are not in a hurry. One hyena appears first at the edge between shadow and moonlight. Its body low, back sloping, walking as if nothing here matters. Then another appears to the right, then another shadow behind. None of them rush in. None of them are reckless. They simply close the circle. That is the key difference between hyenas and many other predators. They do not seek heroic moments. They do not need a beautiful finishing blow. They only need to do one thing long enough: maintain pressure. Spotted hyenas live in large social groups called clans, sometimes reaching dozens of members and in certain areas even up to around 80 individuals. They communicate through a variety of distinctive sounds, the famous laugh, long calls that travel across the plains, serving both coordination and social pressure within the group. Once you understand that, you begin to see why even a powerful lone lion does not truly want a prolonged confrontation with them. This is not a duel of pride. It is a test of endurance. Each time the lion turns left, a hyena on the right steps forward half a pace. Each time it roars, the clan retreats slightly, then immediately closes the gap again. Each time it tries to lower its head to eat quickly, another shadow glides close enough to force it upright again. This is erosion in its purest form. Not heroic, not glamorous, but brutally effective. You are not struck down in a single blow. You are drained by hundreds of moments of tension. If by now you're starting to feel that hyenas are more frightening than you once believed, leave a comment with the number 1. Because nature rarely gives control to the loudest animal. More often, it belongs to the one who makes the opponent unwilling to pay any further price. The lion circles for the 5th time, then the 6th. Its shoulders are still massive. Its claws are still there. Its jaws can still crush bone. But one thing is changing rapidly: space. There is no longer room for a decisive strike. Because hyenas never rush straight into the killing zone, they force that zone to rotate, shift, and bend away from them. The entire confrontation begins to resemble a wheel. At the center is the lion. Around it are tightening rings of pressure. The rough laughter continues. It sounds almost sickening, but in their world, it is the sound of coordination, the sound of persistence, the sound of a clan that knows if no one gives up early, the opponent will eventually tire first. And then the coldest choice appears: keep the prey, or keep your life. It sounds simple, but on the savannah, it is one of the bitterest choices. Because the lion has already paid for this carcass. It stalked. It sprinted. It burned its strength. It carried the heat, the hunger, the risk of injury. But now, if it clings to its prize, it may be trapped in a confrontation that ends not with a fatal strike but with exhaustion. This is where nature becomes colder than any moral story humans tell. Being deserving does not mean you keep what you earned. Taking something first does not mean it is truly yours. On the savannah, ownership is constantly rewritten by the ability to defend it. One hyena edges closer. The lion lashes out. The hyena jumps back, but instantly another slips into the blind spot. Again, and again. There is no dramatic climax. No swelling music. No moment when the whole clan rushes in like a tidal wave. And precisely because there is no obvious explosion of action, confronting hyenas is so exhausting. Because you never know where the final line is, Every boundary erodes slowly until suddenly, you realize you have retreated far from where you began. Now, if you step back and look at the wider picture, it becomes clearer. The lion represents individual power, dominance, the ability to finish quickly when conditions are favorable. Hyenas represent numbers, persistence, high tolerance for pain, and a strategy that accepts gradual loss in exchange for long-term gain. From the perspective of behavioral biology, this is not about one species being nobler than another, it is about two different survival models existing within the same ecosystem. And in many situations, the strategy that makes the opponent less willing to pay the price is the strategy that wins. The night grows deeper. The lion roars again. This time, the sound is no longer a declaration of authority. It sounds more like a final protest against the reality that the circle will not dissolve simply because of its pride. A hyena approaches the carcass, not to eat yet, but to measure the lion's reaction distance. A few seconds later, another comes close from a different angle. Then another. The lion is forced to turn constantly. Each turn costs a little more energy. Each roar costs a little more breath. Each threat teaches the clan a little more about its real limits. And that is when the balance quietly shifts. No noise, no announcement, but impossible to reverse. Finally, the lion steps back, just one step, then another. Not quite fleeing, just moving away from the center of the tightening circle. The hyenas do not celebrate. They do not need to. A clan built on persistence never requires a grand victory ritual. Their victories arrive quietly. One hyena begins to bite into the carcass. Another stands guard. Another still watches. And just like that, ownership changes hands. If you only look at the surface, you might say the lion lost because it was outnumbered. But the truth is deeper than that. It lost because the battle was no longer being fought on the field of the quick kill. It had been dragged into the arena of attrition. And in that arena, hyenas are masters. I have always felt that this confrontation reveals one of the deepest truths of nature. The strongest does not always control the game. The one who controls the cost of continuing is far more dangerous. If the opponent no longer dares to pay more, if every minute that passes works against them, if every step forward costs more than stepping back, then victory will eventually tilt in your favor. That is why the savannah has never been only a place of claws. It is a place of strategy, of psychology, of time, of knowing when to risk everything and when to force the other side to release the prize themselves. But the coldest battle of the grasslands has not yet fully appeared, because there is another frontier even harsher than the plains. A place where individual strength, numbers, and speed can all become meaningless if you step into an environment that does not belong to you. A place where calm water can be the doorway to another kind of death. And when the zebras and wildebeest are forced to descend into the river, the savannah will remind us of one final truth. Nature is not fair. It is only loyal to circumstance. If the grassland is where death can be seen from a distance, then the river is where death waits just beneath the mirror of the surface. That is the most terrifying thing. Not the roar, not the exploding dust, not the thunder of a chase, but the stillness. The water lies there, murky, heavy, almost emotionless. At first glance, it is only a river cutting across the migration route. An obstacle. A harder stretch. Just one more step in the herd's long journey. But on the savannah, water is not only life. It is also territory. And every territory has an owner. In the Serengeti Mara ecosystem, crocodiles are found in rivers, wetlands, and especially around the Mara River, where the famous crossings of zebras and wildebeest take place during migration season. As herds move in rhythm with the cycles of rain and drought in search of grass and water, these river crossings become true survival bottlenecks. The zebras stand at the riverbank. Their ears twitch, their necks stretch forward, then pull back. None of them are foolish. They can smell something wrong in the water. They can see the unnatural murkiness of the current. They can hear the kind of silence that only ambush sites seem to possess. But behind them is the pressure of the migration. Ahead of them is the opposite bank, where grass still waits. If they do not enter the water, they may die slowly of hunger. If they do enter, they may die very quickly. That is the kind of choice that makes nature harsher than any lesson humans ever try to teach about fairness. There is no good option, only the less terrible one. A female zebra steps in first. Her hoof sinks into the mud. The water rises to her knees. She pauses for half a second, glances back, then continues. And right after that, the whole herd seems to be pulled forward by an invisible wave. Body after body plunges in. Water erupts upward. Sharp breathing mixes with the slap of the current. The black and white stripes become chaos in the muddy flow, as if the river itself is tearing into hundreds of moving fragments. And that is when the water opens its mouth. A crocodile does not appear the way a lion appears. There is no long acceleration, no clear warning. They lie motionless below, waiting with a patience that feels almost mechanical. Then, with one violent surge and a single well-placed bite, the battle is dragged completely into the environment that favors them. That is what makes river crossings one of the most dangerous ordeals of migration. The prey must leave land where legs, shoulders, and speed are assets, and enter water, where control belongs to the ambush predator. The water explodes. Not loudly, but enough to make the whole stretch of river seem to flinch. One zebra rears upward. Its body tilts sharply to one side. Its eyes go wide. Its front legs thrash wildly. Beneath the surface, whatever holds it is almost invisible. Only when a dark snout and ridged back break the water do you understand that this began long before anyone saw it. A crocodile does not hunt through spectacle. It hunts by erasing the final fraction of time the prey might have had to react. 3. Then it is over. Sometimes fear does not even have time to fully form into awareness. That is why I have always thought river crossings are among the most brutal sequences in all of nature. Not only because there is so much death, but because there is so little chance to resist. On land, a zebra can still sprint. It can still kick backward. It can still turn, dodge, switch direction, rejoin the herd. In water, everything it does best is slowed, and the crocodile is placed directly on its throne. If you have ever held your breath watching crossings like these, leave a comment with the number 1, because at this point, the story is no longer about who is stronger. It is a story about circumstance. And in nature, circumstance is often more terrifying than the predator itself. A foal is separated from its mother by the current. It tries to swim diagonally, tossing its head up again and again. On the far bank, the herd keeps surging forward. Behind it, the old shore is already too far away. In midstream, only one law still matters: who can keep their head above water longer. Some make it across. Some slip at the point where the bank rises. Some escape the crocodiles only to collapse from exhaustion the moment their hooves touch land. That is the uncomfortable truth of the savannah. Escaping one death does not mean you have won. It only means you have earned the right to face the next trial. On the far bank, a group of zebras rear up, breathing hard, water pouring in streams down their striped bodies. On land, they return to their natural advantages: sturdy frames, strong necks and shoulders, and legs built for acceleration and sudden changes of direction across open grassland. But those advantages return only after they leave the water, only after they have passed through the very environment in which they are weakest. And that is the core of every natural confrontation. This is not a battle between the strong and the weak. It is a battle between environments. Lions are strong in tall grass and close pressure. Wildebeest are strong when they can maintain a defensive formation. Hyenas are strong when the struggle stretches into attrition. Cheetahs are strong in a few explosive seconds on open ground. Zebras are strong on land. Crocodiles are strong in water. No one is strong everywhere. No one is unbeatable under all conditions. Nature does not enforce justice. Nature only activates the advantage of whoever is on the right ground. Once you understand that, you begin to see the savanna differently. From above, the grasslands and scattered woodlands may look peaceful, but they are always filled with tension. These ecosystems do not run on morality or fairness. They run on cold ecological rules. Whichever species makes better use of food, water, formation, speed, environment, and timing is the one that gets a chance to continue. There are only two clear states there: those who survive and those who disappear. In the distance, a cheetah walks along the edge of the grass. Its body light, spine curved like a drawn bow, head low. It is not the strongest predator on the savanna, not the animal with the most crushing bite, not the greatest fighter in a direct confrontation, but it possesses something more frightening in many hunts: the ability to turn time into a weapon. It does not need to roar. It does not need to display itself. It does not need the whole grassland to know it is coming. It simply watches, chooses, then explodes. In one sense, the cheetah is the most modern embodiment of the savanna. Everything is decided in a very short span, and whoever reacts wrongly in that instant may pay for it with everything. The crocodile is the opposite. It is not the hunter of speed. It is the hunter of waiting. If the cheetah is an arrow released, then the crocodile is a trap that was already there before you knew you were about to step into it. One kills through an extreme burst of acceleration, the other kills through extreme stillness. And yet both are effective, because the savanna does not favor style. It only favors timing. The sun begins to lean downward. The riverbank grows quiet again, as if there had never been any struggle at all. That is another reason nature is so haunting. After all the blood, water, pounding hooves, and desperate thrashing, the landscape returns very quickly to its original calm. The river keeps flowing. The grass keeps bending in the wind. Birds keep crossing overhead, as if loss were such a normal part of the world that it does not even need to be acknowledged. But if you watch long enough, you begin to understand. Every creature here, predator or prey, lives under the same pressure. It must survive. It must adapt. It must keep moving, even after losing part of the herd, part of its strength, part of its advantage, or part of its flesh. No creature on the savanna truly lives easily. Lions do not live easily, because hunger always follows failure. Hyenas do not live easily, because their victories come through relentless grinding pressure. Cheetahs do not live easily, because one wrong beat can cost them the entire chance. Zebras do not live easily, because they must enter the water even when they know death waits below. Wildebeest do not live easily, because their whole journey is a continuous negotiation with thirst and teeth. And perhaps that is the greatest lesson the savanna forces humans to learn. That life is not always beautiful in a gentle way. That survival is not always the same as glorious victory. That sometimes, simply continuing is already a miracle. If we look at the whole picture from dawn to dusk, we see that the savanna does not tell a simple story of good and evil. It tells a story of movement, of pressure, of cost, of limits, of how every species carries both a gift and a weakness, a home ground and a death zone, a moment to rise and a moment when it must retreat. The lion teaches us that strength only matters when the price is acceptable. The hyena teaches us that sustained pressure can break even a larger opponent. The wildebeest teaches us that a herd is not only for running, but sometimes for turning around. The zebra teaches us that beauty can also be a strategy. The cheetah teaches us that a few seconds are enough to change an entire fate. The crocodile teaches us that silent power can be more terrifying than any roar. And the savanna as a whole, like a vast living force, teaches us its coldest lesson of all. Nature does not promise fairness to anyone. It asks only one question, over and over again, from the first light of morning to the final glow of dusk. Today, under these conditions, who can still hold on? That is why, when the evening light fades across the African plains, the feeling that remains longest in the viewer is not only suspense, it is awe. Awe before a world that does not operate according to our emotions. Awe before creatures that cannot speak, yet are writing the fiercest epics of survival. And awe before the truth that even in a place that seems made only of blood and teeth, there is still a profound beauty. The beauty of those who refuse to give up, the beauty of instinct pushed to its very edge. The beauty of life that, even when surrounded on every side, still refuses to disappear easily.